Hiya, teacher friends! Today we're going to talk about terminating packages on italki. It's not a nice thing to talk about, but it has to be said. So first of all, if you haven't subscribed already or hit the like button, definitely do that, and let's begin. So to terminate a package on italki, that's when you cancel a package early with a student. Either the student or the teacher could do this. Usually this happens when there's some sort of problem that has occurred. So I'm going to talk about 5 times this has happened with me and my students. Each of the reasons for the termination are different. A lot of thought went into the termination and a lot of thought have come out of it. And I want to share this with you so that I could give you more insight on this situation. And hopefully I could make other teachers who have gone through these sorts of situations just feel better. All right, so number one, I grouped 3 into 1 actually. These are 3 separate students, but I think I terminated these packages all for the same reasons. And that's because I'm not the type of teacher who likes teaching children. I don't like teaching preteens or even a lot of teenagers. Although I have had great opportunities and experiences on italki with some of my young students who have been extremely well behaved, I am not a teacher who thrives with young learners. And that's just something that I have realized while teaching on italki. And I thank italki for giving me the opportunity to realize that about myself. So for each of these students, it kind of, the motivation just kind of fizzled out to this part where, we're 20, 30, 40 lessons in. We've spent a lot of time in the class and the students just start to lose motivation. We start to lose our sense of direction. Now, for me as a teacher, it's my responsibility to get back on track and to stay on track in the first place. So I think if I ever taught young learners in the future, especially on italki, I'd be a lot better prepared. Yeah. However, part of it is speaking and conferencing with parents, and that's something that I haven't really experienced and interacted with in depth as a person who usually teaches adult learners. So I'll tell you what happened with each of these students. With one of these students, I taught him for a lot of classes, and it just basically came to the point, he's a boy, he's going through phases, and he's getting a little lippy, and he's getting a little bit of attitude. And you could tell that we've gone through a lot of the basic topics. Some of the material is becoming repetitive, and at the point where I terminated this package, we were not yet at the point where we could where I knew how to revitalize the curriculum and spice things up a bit. So that was on me equally. Another one was again a disrespectful student who was just trying to push the buttons of the teacher. I'd get into class and I'd say, "This is what we're talking about today," and he'd say, "No, I don't want to." And then I'd give him another option and he'd say, "No, I don't want to." And then I'd give him a bunch of options and he'd say, "Well, you're the teacher, you should tell me." That kind of situation. And again, as a teacher who usually teaches adults, I didn't really know how to face this head on. So that was another situation where I spoke to the mom. The mom knew that he was getting a little bit, that he had a little bit of attitude, and we ended on in a good way. And the last one was basically a student who was missing a lot of class, and the connection was quite bad as well. This is a student who was on the verge of graduating, so he's an older teenager as well. And I think that this was again a lack of motivation that was going into it, and that's one of the reasons why I really prefer to teach adults, because I find that for what I consider to be motivation, they have more of it. Now, some people say that children are more motivated because they have more energy, so if you filter the motivation into the right place, then you're good to go. For teachers who could do that, all the power to you, but that's just not my style. So those 3 into 1, that's one reason why I've terminated lessons, basically because I don't gel well with young learners. Number two, there was a student who I taught a lot of lessons to in the first couple months. Um, Again, I was just I can't believe how inexperienced I was a year and a half ago compared to now, right? I have really learned a lot because at this point I just didn't really know how to take it a step further. This student booked a lot of lessons while my lessons were cheap, right? And I was going through a moment on italki where I had a lot of lessons. I mean, I was teaching 11, 12 lessons per day. Um, and this student, because he booked so many lessons, he had very high expectations. He was definitely trying to get a bargain. And he didn't really know what he wanted. He just knew that he did not sound fluent. And I have to say, this student had fantastic proficiency. However, clearly his confidence was a little bit low. So after talking about a range of different topics for business English, he just kept saying, I want to improve. I want to improve. I'm not improving. Um, and this, especially for the price that I was teaching him for, I thought he was already getting a bargain just to be chatting with me. But I know we have to be fair. No matter what the student is is paying, you advertise a class and you should deliver it, right? So unfortunately, I had to terminate this package because the student was not patient. Because this student had only been learning with me for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and he was expecting to see higher. He was expecting to see higher improvements, larger improvements than were realistic at the time, right? Um, and even though we tried to create a plan, he seemed to be very picky. I think that it's up to the teacher to try new things. It's also up to the student to try new things. And I think that the best students that I've had are the ones who have given me the benefit of the doubt, tried things, and if they don't work, then they say it. But I think that it is on the student to try different methods, especially if they have booked a lot of classes, they know that there's a lot of time, and they have been kind of stuck in limbo in this awkward maybe B2 C1 or C1 C2 phase for a while, then it's worth it to try some different methods and to give your teacher the benefit of the doubt. But that goes both ways. Okay, number three. This one was tough. This actually happened in an IELTS preparation class, and this is probably with a student. I wouldn't say it's just impatience. I would say it was straight up anger. This student would just get angry at these, exceptions in our evil language that we call English, with all the prepositions, all the exceptions, and he would tell me, but we don't do that in my language. And so sometimes students just say, oh yeah, we don't do that in my language. That's why I made the mistake. A lot of students really like to tell you why they're making a mistake. I think it's just a part of the shame of making a mistake. Some students grow up in countries where there's a lot of shame attached to it. Like for me, if I make a mistake in my French class, I'm not going to explain to my teacher in a long explanation. Like I'm not talking about a short one, but a long explanation why I make that mistake. But I'll have a lot of students with me who will tell me, who will take 2 or 3 minutes to explain why they made a mistake, and they'll make a few mistakes while they give the explanation as well. But that's cool if it makes you feel better, no problem. And it's a good way to build rapport as well for the teacher to understand why the student makes the mistakes and the transfer errors, blah, blah, blah. But in any case, this student was saying, like, this does not exist in my language. And he was trying to ask me, like, why does this exist in English but not in my language? And I did my best to explain it to him, but even after all the explanations, it was like anger, right? And at a certain point, it's like it's a different language, right? Like it's there are different rules, right? Like there are many other different rules between English and your native language. This is just one of them, right? So, it was that, and then some of the IELTS prompts really enraged this student, and really, he just did not understand the logic of structuring an essay and the argumentation and what you're specifically supposed to address here. He'd come to some lessons in a really good mood, like really kind of amped up and ready to go and in high spirits. And then some of them, he was just um, not in good form, right? And for me, I tried my best to kind of keep things low anxiety and try to keep things calm. And I even explained to him a few times, that this is normal. A lot of my students go through this, and I tried to give him different things to kind of help him um, let go and relax inside the class. But it got to the point where he would come to class just 0 to 100. Like he was boiling, like just kind of a basket of emotions. And you could tell that it's anger towards English, it's anger towards this test. Um, and unfortunately, we had to finish it right there. I explained to him, hey, I completely understand your frustrations, but I think we should take a break from classes for a little while. Maybe you could try things with a new teacher and you could start from scratch, and that'll be a little bit of a refresher. And by the way, whether if you're a teacher or a student, I think there is value in that. To study with different teachers is just as good as having different students as a teacher. So that's another reason why it's not good to get offended or to be defensive if your student decides to go with another teacher at some point. So that was number three. Basically, it was anger problems from students, and my inability to deal with this as well. Another student, I think it was some sort of attention issue, and maybe some sort of nervous issue as well. This student would just kind of blurt out and have very sudden outbursts in the class while I was teaching, and he would ask for different explanations, and I'd start to give him an explanation, and then he'd cut me off, and then I'd start to talk, and then he'd cut me off again, and it got to the point where every little correction was taking like 5 minutes to really get through, and that's what was happening because of all the interruptions. And I explained to the student 2 or 3 times that he has to let me finish, but this became repetitive. And then I just told him I'm sorry, and he completely understood. So I don't know what was going on there, but there was definitely some issue with interruptions, and it could have something to do with attention as well, with the ability to listen for a long period of time. I think that's one of the reasons why, as a teacher, it's great for you to have the ability to give explanations quickly or concisely. Don't cut corners when you give explanations, but to try to limit the amount of time and space that you're taking, because sometimes it could be overwhelming for students to just be listening to a million examples of the right version of their answer. Yeah. Okay, so that's number four. The fifth and final one, this one was a heartbreaker. This was with a student that I was getting along very, very well with, and it just came down to disrespecting my time, a lack of respect towards my time. This student would cancel class, and last minute, and I was fine with it at a certain point, and then I told him I'm not doing that anymore, but he would still try to cancel class. And I let it go for a couple times, but then there was one time where he canceled class, and I told him, okay, unfortunately I won't be able to refund it. And then he said, okay, actually we could have class. And that's when I was like, okay, no. And I sent him a message, and I just said, like, I'm sorry, but that's a lack of respect of my time. this isn't just a kind of convenient little opt-out situation where you could you could miss class if you're not feeling good enough, or if you don't have enough motivation to attend. It's either you can attend or you can't, right? And if you really can't attend, that's one thing. Then you cancel the class. But if you can attend and you try to cancel the class, and I know that after so many times of canceling classes in the past and all the rapport we had built, that's definitely a problem. Yeah, so that was the fifth and final one. Those are five different situations where I have terminated packages, and really students terminated packages with me. Like I think it was mutual in each of these scenarios. So let's just rehash this very quickly. The first one came down to my inability to deal with kids, and a lot of the kids having attitude and definitely a lack of motivation, and my inability to instill more motivation into my students. The second one was a student who had a lack of patience. The third one was a student who definitely had an intense anger. The fourth one was a student who had perhaps a lack of attention, and interrupted me often. And the final one was a student who showed a lack of respect towards my time. So those are five common ways. And this has not just resulted in terminations of packages. All five of these have been things that I have dealt with. They will happen as teachers. They will happen on italki. And I would like to hear from you all, what you have experienced on your time on italki as well. So feel free to share your stories down in the box below. I'd love to hear about them. If you have any suggestions on how I could have dealt with these situations differently, or on how other italki teachers could deal with these situations, please share, because we're all here to share and to help one another. For now, thank you very much, and until next time, keep smiling.